Good evening. An orderly and productive question time in Parliament this morning. Among some of the issues we'll look at in this program, an appeal by a government minister to the government and Parliament to ensure appropriate funding to counter a rising trend in piracy in several maritime provinces. The Prime Minister places a temporary moratorium on the sale of houses by the Housing Corporation, and over 6,000 ward members or councillors are set to be rewarded. A rare appeal by a government minister to his own government for appropriate funding to counter what is said to be a frightening trend of piracy in the waters of maritime provinces. The concern was raised during question time in Parliament today by the member for Kairukuhiri, Peter Isa Aimo, and wanted to know government countermeasures. There are none. We don't even have police boats to patrol our waters. That was the response from the Police Minister, Robert Atiafa, who appeared and sounded more like a lone cabinet minister crying for help from his own government as well as the Parliament.
My question without notice is directed to the Internal Security or Police Minister. It's regarding piracy in the waters around Port Moresby. As he and everyone may be aware, my electorate surrounds the city of Port Moresby, and piracy, the act of piracy seems to be on the rise around Port Moresby city and its electorates and my electorate as well. In recent times, in fact, in the last week, off Paga Hill Point, through piracy, a death did occur for one of my constituents from Rocco Village. Also with the Buai ban, all Buais ferried through the western end of the electorate into the partially lifted ban on Buai to Motu Koitabu villages. And there's also an act of piracy along as they come. So my question to the Minister is, one, do we still have in existence the water reds or the water police unit in existence? And are they operational to look into piracy incidents around Port Moresby City and the Central Province areas? Number two, again with policy, during the acting, when Minister Charles Abel was in acting capacity as Minister for Tourism, announced that there'll be tourism police or reservists established along the Kokoda track areas and every other area that has got tourism potential to prevent a reputation of what has brought tourism to its knees recently in Papua New Guinea with the attack on foreign tourists. So my question is, are those plans being announced as government policies by ministers and yourself with regard to water police in existence or not? Thank you.
Minister of the Police.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the two questions by the member for Hirikaruku. Water policing, like all the former, let me start by saying all the former ministers that come in have all good plans for and intention for the police force. And when I took on from the former Minister for Police, I've brought in a submission, a big one, to NEC, and they have approved it. But due to financial constraint, we have not actually looked into it. But at this juncture, I want to say thank you to all the members on both sides of the House, the ministers, the governors, who have been assisting the police in terms of housing, vehicles, and also boats. Secondly, I'd like to thank the Prime Minister and the government for making available $275 million over 5 years for modernization program. And through that program, we were supposed to have funded boats for the police department or for sea, to contain sea piracy through water police. However, again, due to the financial constraint, more than 50% of the funding had been recalled. So we also have that issue of funding. In terms of whether or not we have in existence the water police, we do have. 10 years ago, the government at that time had bought dinghies and boats for sea policing for the maritime provinces. And as I'm speaking now, there are none of those boats in existence. They have lack of maintenance, or they broke down, and all the provinces have no boats, and I've been receiving reports of sea piracy throughout the maritime provinces, especially in Alotau, in Morobe, in Medan, and also in Central and East New Britain, all those provinces. I call on the Parliament and also our government, as we are going into putting in place all developments, major developments. Likewise, in parallel, we have to look after national security and interest in terms of funding. So now that we have the NEC approved funding arrangement in place, and it will cost more than 1.5 to 2 billion to fund the police force over the next 5 or 6 years. And you all can appreciate, Mr. Speaker, that a lot of the institutional houses and police stations throughout the country, in rural districts, but as well as the provincial centers, have gone down. The sales have been condemned. Those offices, sales were meant for the population 30 years ago of 2 million. Now the population have increased. We will need to put in a lot of funding into developing the police projects in terms of capital development, build new office complexes throughout the country, provincial centers, build new sales, and also provide all other able assistance to get the police working. So my answer to the questions, we have those plans in place, just that we do not have the funds to mobilize. Tourism police, yes, there are also plans on it, but again, we have that same issue. So I'm appealing to our Parliament now and our government after election 2017, that if there is a way forward for this country, we will need to spend a lot of money into improving the police force. We do have the manpower now. We are on time, but there are no houses to house them. Mr. Speaker, that would be my answers to the question. Thank you.
Police Minister Robert Atiafa answering questions from the member for Kairuku on piracy. Another question from which two strong points are made: why does a government department or an agent threaten another of the same over outstanding bills? Worse, why do Papua New Guineans forcefully or threaten their countrymen out of government houses? More on that after the break.